I'm 73 years old. I don't say that to shock you, and I don't say it for sympathy. I say it because time has already done what it will eventually do to everyone. It stripped away my illusions. At this age, you stop speaking in theories. You speak from receipts. Every belief you carry has been tested, bent, broken, or proven in ways that cannot be argued with.
When your young age feels abstract, something distant, something that happens to other people, but when you reach your 70s age becomes physical. You feel it in your joints when you stand. You hear it in the pauses before you speak. You see it when you look in the mirror and recognize someone who has survived more than they ever expected to. 73 means I've watched people chase things that didn't love them back. It means I've buried friends who thought they had time. It means I've lived long enough to know which worries were a waste and which moments should have been protected at all costs. Authority doesn't come from being right. It comes from having been wrong and paying for it in years. I spent decades believing I understood life because I was productive, responsible, and praised. But none of those things taught me how to live. They only taught me how to perform. At 73, you understand something younger people don't yet feel in their bones. Time does not speed up, it disappears, quietly, without drama. 1 year folds into the next until decades collapse into memory. You don't notice it happening while you're busy planning for later. This is why age matters here. Not because it makes me wiser than you, but because it makes me honest in a way I couldn't afford to be before. I no longer need to impress anyone. I no longer need to justify my choices. And I no longer pretend that life is forgiving about delay. If you're listening to someone my age, you're not hearing advice. You're hearing warning signals sent backward through time. I am not special. I am simply further down the road. And I can tell you, without exaggeration or drama, most people do not realize what they've done with their lives until they are almost out of it. 73 gives you clarity. It removes the noise. And what's left is simple, uncomfortable, and true. You are spending your life right now. People like to say age brings wisdom. I don't believe that anymore. Age brings accounting. You don't wake up one day wiser. You wake up one day aware of how much time something actually costs you. Wisdom sounds noble. Cost is honest. Cost tells you what something really demanded in exchange: your health, your relationships, your presence, your peace. I didn't gain insight because I was smart. I gained it because I watched years disappear while I was busy being responsible. I watched birthdays turn into obligations, conversations turn into reminders, dreams turn into maybe someday. For most of my life, I believed I was being patient. I thought I was delaying gratification. I thought I was earning my future. What I was really doing was trading my present for a promise that kept changing its terms. No one tells you how expensive waiting is. Waiting costs you ordinary days. Waiting costs you energy you don't get back. Waiting costs you closeness with people you assume will always be there. And the cruelest part, you don't feel the cost when you're paying it. You only feel it when the account is nearly empty. Time doesn't reward loyalty. It doesn't care how hard you tried or how good your intentions were. It simply moves forward, collecting interests on every postponed decision. I didn't become wiser at 50. I became aware that I had spent years preparing for a life that never actually arrived. I had plans, timelines, conditions, and while I was busy managing them, life was happening without me. That's the truth most people don't want to hear. You don't lose your life all at once. You leak it quietly, respectably, one not now at a time. Looking back, I don't measure my life by achievements. I measure it by absences, by moments I rushed through, by conversations I shortened, by joy I treated as optional instead of essential. Time didn't teach me wisdom. It showed me the bill. And now, at 73, I understand something younger me never could. The most dangerous expense in life is assuming you'll have another chance to pay attention. There's one sentence that quietly ruins more lives than any failure ever could. It sounds harmless, responsible. Even people say it without fear, without urgency, without realizing what they are handing away. I have time. I said it for decades. I said it when my children asked me to play and I told them later. I said it when my parents called and I let it go to voicemail because I was tired. I said it when I felt restless in my own life and convinced myself that someday things would feel more meaningful. Time felt generous back then, endless, forgiving. I treated it like a resource that renewed itself. But time is not generous. It is precise, and it charges you for every assumption. When you say I have time, what you really mean is this doesn't matter enough right now. And if you repeat that long enough, you wake up one day surrounded by things that mattered far less than you believed, and missing the things that mattered most. The lie works because it feels logical. You're not saying no forever. You're saying not yet. You're not abandoning joy or postponing it. You're not neglecting people. You're just busy. It all sounds reasonable, mature, necessary. That's why it's dangerous. Because time doesn't announce when it stops cooperating with your plans. It doesn't warn you before bodies change, relationships cool, energy fades, or people leave. One day, without ceremony, later becomes impossible. I believed life would slow down eventually. That once I crossed the right threshold, enough money, enough stability, enough achievement, there would be space to breathe. But life doesn't open space for you. You have to take it. And taking it feels irresponsible when everyone around you is still running. So I ran too. I kept telling myself I was building something worthwhile. And maybe I was. But I was also ignoring the quiet truth that kept tapping on my shoulder. This is your life right now. The cruel part of the lie is that it only reveals itself in hindsight. You don't realize how many some days you've spent until your future is smaller than your past. If you believe you have time, you will waste it. Not dramatically, not foolishly, respectably, slowly, in ways no one will question until it's too late to question yourself. I know, I lived that sentence. This is the moment where the story stops being about me, because what matters isn't what I did with my time. What matters is what you are doing with yours right now, while you still believe it's abundant. You may be listening to this and thinking, this doesn't apply to me. That's exactly what I thought when I was younger. I believed my situation was different, my responsibilities heavier, my timing more complicated. I believed I would recognize the moment when it was finally time to live. That moment never announced itself. Instead, life kept moving, and I kept adapting, adjusting, enduring, waiting for conditions that never stabilized long enough to feel safe. So I want to ask you something uncomfortable, not to scare you, but to wake you. If nothing changed for the next 10 years, would you be okay with that? Same routines, same priorities, same postponements, same explanations, because that's how life usually goes. Not with big turning points, but with quiet continuation. What you tolerate today becomes what you normalize tomorrow. I'm not asking if your life looks impressive. I am not asking if you're reproductive or admired or successful by someone else's standards. I'm asking if you feel present inside your own days. If you're honest, you already know the answer. You know what you keep delaying. You know which conversations you avoid. You know what you say you'll do when things calm down. And you also know, if you let yourself admit it, that things rarely calm down on their own. This is where responsibility shifts, not as blame but as power. Because if you don't choose how to spend your time, something else will choose for you. Work will, obligation will, fear will, habit will, and none of them care about your happiness. I can't give you more time. I can only tell you what it feels like to run out of excuses for how you used it. This story is not meant to inspire you someday. It's meant to interrupt you now. Because whether you realize it or not, you are already writing the version of this story you'll tell yourself later. The only question is whether you'll be proud of it or wish you had listened sooner. The moment that shattered my illusion of time did not arrive dramatically. There was no warning, no voice, no slow realization. It arrived in the middle of an ordinary day, doing ordinary things. Surrounded by people who assumed like I did that tomorrow was guaranteed. I was 52. I remember sitting in a meeting half listening, thinking about what I would make for dinner later. My chest felt tight, but I ignored it. I had ignored my body for years. Productivity teaches you to distrust discomfort. You learn to override it, postpone it, silence it. Then the room tilted. It wasn't pain at first. It was confusion, the kind that makes you embarrassed because you think you're about to inconvenience someone. I tried to speak. I couldn't. The next thing I remember is waking up to fluorescent lights and the sound of machines breathing for me. They called it a cardiac event. I called it the moment time stopped pretending. In that hospital bed, stripped of routine and distraction, I was forced into stillness. No emails, no obligations, no excuses, just hours. Empty, quiet hours where thoughts finally caught up with me. That's when the terror arrived. Not fear of death, but fear of having lived wrong. I realized that if my heart had stopped completely, the story of my life would have ended mid-sentence, not unfinished because I died young, but unfinished because I never arrived where I thought I was going. I had been preparing to live instead of living. That day didn't just threaten my life, it exposed it. Autopilot is comfortable. That's why it's deadly. When I was lying there recovering, I saw my life clearly for the first time. Not in highlights, not in achievements, but in patterns. Repetition, routine, motion without presence. I had mistaken momentum for meaning. Every day had been full, but very few had been felt. I was efficient, dependable, admired, and emotionally absent from my own existence. I moved from obligation to obligation like someone following directions they never questioned. Autopilot convinced me I was doing the right thing because I was busy, because I was needed, because stopping felt irresponsible. But autopilot doesn't ask where you're going. It only keeps you moving. That realization was harder than the heart attack itself, because the heart attack was external. This was internal. It meant the danger wasn't random, it was built. I had trained myself not to notice my life. That's the quiet tragedy most people never see coming. They don't choose unhappiness. They drift into it while doing everything right. And by the time they wake up, they're exhausted, older, and unsure how to change. Autopilot doesn't feel like a mistake while you're in it. It feels like adulthood. And that's why so many people never leave it. There is a moment that comes late in life when you realize you have been climbing with incredible discipline, incredible endurance, and absolutely no curiosity about where the ladder was leaning. For me, that realization didn't arrive with anger. It arrived with grief. I had done everything I was supposed to do. I followed the rules. I met expectations. I delayed pleasure, sacrificed rest, and justified absence in the name of responsibility. Every rung felt necessary at the time. Every promotion felt earned. Every compromise felt temporary. But when I finally paused long enough to look around, I saw the truth. I had been climbing someone else's definition of a good life. The tragedy of the wrong wall is not failure. It's success, because success locks you in. It rewards you just enough to keep you climbing. It surrounds you with praise that drowns out doubt, and doubt is the only thing that could have saved you earlier. You don't question the ladder when you're moving upward. You question it when your knees hurt, your relationships are thin, and your joy feels conditional. The cruel part is that you can't simply switch walls without cost. Time has weight. Years add gravity. And while it's never too late to change direction, it is always later than you think. I didn't waste my life, but I spent too much of it proving something that didn't need proving. If my own wake-up hadn't come when it did, watching others lose time would have forced it eventually. I watched colleagues retire and disappear within months, as if their identities had been swallowed by silence. I watched friends work themselves into illness, convinced rest could wait. I watched marriages quietly erode under the weight of later. The most haunting moments were funerals, not because of death but because of what people said afterward. He was always working. She never slowed down. They had plans. Plans became the most tragic word I knew. One friend, brilliant and relentless, built something extraordinary. He promised his family it would all be worth it someday. Someday arrived in the form of a stroke. He survived, but the man who returned was not the man who left. His body lived, his timing didn't. Watching others lose time stripped away my denial. It showed me that waiting is not neutral. It is a decision, and it carries consequences whether you acknowledge them or not. Everyone thinks they'll be the exception. No one is. Regret does not scream. It whispers. It shows up in quiet moments when nothing distracts you. It surfaces in conversations that feel unfinished. It lives in the memories you replay not to relive them, but to mourn what never happened. I don't regret the risks I took. I regret the risks I avoided. I regret the trips I postponed until energy was lower, the conversations I rushed, the creativity I treated like a luxury instead of oxygen, the love I assumed would always wait. Regret isn't about what went wrong. It's about what never lived. And the older you get, the clearer that inventory becomes. The hardest change after my heart attack wasn't logistical. It wasn't stepping back from work or adjusting my schedule. It was letting go of who I thought I was supposed to be. For decades, my identity had been built on usefulness, on reliability, on being the person who handled things, fixed problems, stayed composed. I was admired for it. I was rewarded for it. And slowly, without noticing, I became trapped by it. When your identity is built around performance, stopping feels like failure. Rest feels selfish. Presence feels unproductive. I didn't know how to be without doing. After the hospital, people praised my strengths. They told me how lucky I was. What they didn't see was the quiet panic underneath. Because if I wasn't constantly achieving, who was I? That question terrified me. So I sat with it, uncomfortably, without answers. I allowed myself to be quiet long enough for something unfamiliar to surface: honesty. I wasn't exhausted because life was hard. I was exhausted because I was pretending. Pretending I wanted the things I was chasing. Pretending I was fulfilled by what impressed others. The recode happened slowly. I stopped introducing myself by what I did. I stopped measuring days by productivity. I began asking different questions, not what should I be doing, but what feels alive. At first, it felt irresponsible, then it felt freeing, then it felt necessary. Identity is not who you convince others you are. It's who remains when you stop performing. I didn't lose myself. I uncovered her. Time used to feel abstract to me, something I managed with calendars and reminders, something flexible, forgiving. Now I see it differently. Time is not a backdrop. It's a character, silent, observant, uninterested in your excuses. Time doesn't argue with you. It doesn't rush you. It simply moves. And while you're busy negotiating with yourself, it keeps going. What makes time dangerous is that it feels neutral while it's passing. You don't feel it leaving. You feel its absence later. Time watched me say next year over and over. It watched me assume energy would always be there. It watched me prioritize urgency over importance. And it never intervened. That's its nature. Once I saw time as something alive, something finite and unrepeatably, stopped treating it casually. I stopped spending it on things that drained me without return. I stopped loaning it to expectations that didn't serve me. Time doesn't need your respect, but if you don't give it any, it will take everything anyway. Here's what I've learned, watching myself and others. Almost everyone wakes up the same way. Not gently, not gradually, but through rupture, illness, loss, burnout, grief, a moment where the illusion cracks. Very few people wake up because life is going well. They wake up because something interrupts the momentum, because something forces stillness. The pattern is cruel but consistent. By the time you realize time matters, you've already spent most of it. That doesn't mean awareness is useless. It means it's urgent. The people who change aren't the ones who feel inspired. They're the ones who feel cornered by truth. I didn't wake up because I wanted to. I woke up because I had to. And once you see clearly, you can't unsee it. You notice how rushed everyone is, how distracted, how convinced they're running toward something meaningful. Most aren't. The wake up isn't about fear, it's about clarity. And clarity demands response. People misunderstand redemption. They imagine it as a dramatic reversal, a second chance that restores what was lost. But redemption is quieter than that. It doesn't give you back time. It gives you clarity while time still remains. After my heart attack, I became acutely aware of something I had never noticed before. The window was smaller, but it was still open. Redemption is not about erasing regret. Regret is permanent. Redemption is about refusing to add to it. I couldn't go back and attend the dinners I skipped or take the trips I postponed. I couldn't relive years I spent distracted or emotionally unavailable, but I could decide that the years ahead would not be consumed the same way. That's the window. It doesn't open wide. It doesn't stay open forever. And it doesn't announce itself with certainty. You feel it more than you see it, a quiet sense that if you don't change now, you probably never will. Redemption requires humility. You have to admit that some of your choices were wrong, not because you were careless, but because you were conditioned, taught to value the wrong things, praised for endurance instead of presence. The window asks a single question. Knowing what you know now, will you continue anyway? Many people don't step through it. They acknowledge the truth, nod solemnly, and then return to habit. Because habit is comfortable, even when it's killing you slowly. I chose differently, not perfectly, but deliberately. I stopped waiting for motivation. I acted from awareness. I made changes while they were still uncomfortable instead of impossible. Redemption is not grand. It's practical. It's choosing differently in ordinary moments. It's answering the call you would have ignored. It's leaving earlier. It's saying no without apology. It's saying yes without delay. The window doesn't care how old you are, only whether you walk through it while you still can. At some point, life reduces itself to a single question. Not what should I do, not what's expected of me, but how do I want to spend what remains? This is the sacred choice, and it cannot be outsourced. No one else can answer it for you, not your parents, not your partner, not society, not even your past self, who made decisions under different illusions. The sacredness comes from scarcity. You only get one life, and you don't get to rehearse it. Every choice you make excludes another one forever. Once I understood this, indecision stopped feeling neutral. Avoidance stopped feeling safe. I realized that not choosing was still choosing, just in favor of inertia. So I began choosing deliberately. Not what looked impressive, what felt honest. Not what filled my calendar, what filled me. These choices were not always easy. Sometimes they disappointed people. Sometimes they cost opportunities. Sometimes they felt frightening. But fear is not a reliable indicator of danger. Often, it's just a signal that you're re-stepping out of a script that was never written for you. The sacred choice is not about happiness. Happiness is fleeting. The sacred choice is about alignment, about living in a way that doesn't fracture you internally. When your actions match your values, time stops feeling wasted. Even when life is hard, you don't need permission to make this choice. You never did. You just need the courage to accept that time will not wait while you decide. If this is the last thing you ever hear from me, let it be this. You are not behind, but you are not early either. You are exactly where you are, with exactly the amount of time you have left. And that time is already being spent, whether you pay attention or not. Don't wait for certainty. It doesn't come. Don't wait for confidence. It follows action. Don't wait for someday. Someday is a story people tell themselves to feel safe. Pull the people who matter. Say the things you keep editing. Do the work that feels meaningful, even if it's smaller. Take the trip. Start the thing. Rest without guilt. Love without postponement. Your life does not need to be impressive. It needs to be lived. I am 73 years old. I do not fear death. I fear distraction. I fear lives spent waiting for permission that never arrives. If you think you have time, you're wrong. But if you understand that now, really, understand that you are richer than you know, don't waste yours.